You are listening to the Fantasy IPA podcast.
Can't wait. It's time to go eat, baby.
Your audio hangout for the latest intel, projections, and analytics.
Hey, we are playing to win. I'm in a league of my own. They ain't ready for me.
Visit us at fantasyipa.com and follow us on Twitter at fantasy_IPA.
Let's do this.
And then there were two. Welcome to the final episode of the first ever Fantasy Face-Off Bracket Tournament, where we're very excited to wrap this first round up and crown a first-time champion for the Fantasy Face-Off. We're going to get to our guests and our finalists in just a moment. First, I'm going to throw it to Jamie to say hi. How's everything going, Jamie?
Hey, going great. I'm super excited about the final face-off here. All you guys, you, as always, follow me at FIPA_Black. That's FIPA_BLACK. And before I kick it back to Art to introduce our very special guests tonight, I do want to take just a minute here and say thanks to all you guys that have been listening and following this. It's been a really fun concept for us, and a special thanks to Doug Bowles from Utter Fantasy, Jeremy Funk from DFF, our own John Bray, who filled in, and great competitors, Travis May from TFA on Fantasy Authority, Sam Holt and Mo Brewington. I believe that was our closest matchup in this so far. They went point for point, round for round until the tiebreaker. And Sam Holt is from Sunday Funday League and Sam Holt Studios. And then, of course, Smashmouth Mo Brewington from DLF, as is Eric here tonight. But a special thanks to all you guys, and of course to our two very special guests tonight. Art, kicking it back to you so you can introduce those guys.
Yeah, and you mentioned Travis May and Mo Brewington. Off the strengths of victories over Travis May in the quarterfinals, Mo Brewington in the semifinals, it's my honor to present our first competitor, Jake Seeley, the All-In Kid. How are things going, Jake?
I'm doing good. I'm just kind of hoping after my first two rounds that Eric does the favorite as the other guys did and takes a few wrong answers away from me.
Yeah, and I would definitely recommend that you follow Jake at AllinKid on Twitter, and then check out his stuff at Roto Experts and the Fox or Fantasy Sports Network. Our second competitor comes to us off of a first-round win over Doug Bowles from Utter Fantasy and a semifinal win over Jeremy Funk from Dynasty Football Factory. Welcome in, Eric Ollinger. How's everything going, Eric?
Everything's going great, man. I appreciate you guys having me back. Looking forward to getting it done against Jake here. Can't wait, man.
Yeah, and you can follow Eric at Ollinger IDP, and you can find his stuff at Dynasty League Football, DLF, and you can probably find him, this Thursday night watching Suicide Squad as it releases, right?
6 p.m.
You got your tickets already.
Seriously?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep, the whole family, man.
That's not fair.
So, yeah, welcome once again, guys. Really appreciate you guys coming on, and we are going to wrap up our first ever bracket and crown a champion. The format will be the same as the first two rounds, where we will go over two list-style questions where we'll alternate analysts, and they will supply correct answers to the players that fall into a given category. Within those first two rounds, if at any time one of our analysts gets two strikes, the analyst that has not struck out will have the opportunity to complete the list and build a lead. We will also be stopping down.
Yo, sound the bell. School's in, sucker.
Take a pause to get our analyst takes on some of the most perplexing situations and questions within the fantasy community today. Then we will kick off our third round, which is the speed round, where, as usual, we'll be presenting 7 questions where our analysts will have to answer those in rapid-fire succession. All right, let's go ahead and kick off round 1, and by random draw, we're going to start with you today, Eric. In 2015, 7 of the top 15 wide receivers, that is in PPR format, so 7 of the top 15 wide receivers at the end of the year were drafted outside of the third round. So at 401 or beyond. Eric, do you have a first guess for a wide receiver that finished in the top 15 that went outside of the third round in 2015? And by the way, these ADPs for 2015 are pulled directly from Fantasy Football Calculator. So Eric, who is your first guess?
My first guess would, I think, meet both criteria, and it's Alan Hearns. Wow.
Yes, I'm sorry, Eric, but Alan Hearns actually finished at number 18. So while he definitely met the...
I was like, wait, no way.
Yeah, so while he definitely met the ADP, he did not finish in the top 15. So we're only looking for top 15 wide receivers. All right, Eric, unfortunately, that gives you your first strike, and that will kick it over to you, Jake. Jake, do you have a wide receiver that finished in the top 15 that was drafted beyond the third round?
Absolutely. I thought he was going to take my answer, too. My boy, Allen Robinson.
Yes. Yeah, he took the easier of the Allens to get here, but Allen Robinson, if you guys remember, coming off somewhat injury-riddled rookie season where he flashed but never got it pulled all together, he was going at 506 overall and as the 25th wide receiver, so definitely great value as Allen Robinson finished as the number 6 receiver in PPR formats. All right, so that gets you on the board, Jake. As usual, Jake is off to an early lead, and let's see if he looks back this time. Eric, you've got one strike, so let's try to avoid that second one. Who's your second guess?
Doug Baldwin.
Yes, and that school bell means two things. One, correct answer, and two, we're going to stop down for a school break. But Doug Baldwin finished as the number 10 receiver. He is actually the latest person on this list who was going at 1304 or the 61st wide receiver overall.
Undrafted almost.
Yes, I'm sure he went undrafted in quite a few drafts. But let's kick into the school break question. Right now we've got Baldwin going right about 4.41. Lockett is around 6.12 according to Fantasy Football Calculator. But what I want to know from you guys, and please spin this to redraft and to dynasty, but which one of those two are you taking? Because I'm seeing Lockett going ahead of Baldwin in some cases. Baldwin is still only 27, turning 28 in September, but it seems like people are hesitant to buy in. So, Eric, since you answered this one, let's start with you. How are you handling Baldwin and Lockett?
Well, in PPR leagues, I still think Baldwin is the better value, just because nobody's buying that he's going to be able to reproduce anything close to what he did in 2015. So he's a prime candidate for a touchdown regression, but with the retirement of Marshawn Lynch and rebuilding that running back stable, I think that team's going to kind of lean on Russell Wilson. Admittedly, I'm sometimes late to the game on some of these young receivers, and for fantasy purposes, outside of best ball leagues, I have a hard time fully getting on board with Tyler Lockett. I like what he does. I think he's going to be a better NFL player than a consistent fantasy guy. So his ADP is just a little too rich for my blood. I'd rather just wait a few rounds and get Baldwin on the cheap as a wide receiver 3, because nobody seems to be in any rush to get the guy. So at their current price tags, I'll take the cheaper of the two.
All right. How about you, Jake? What is your take on the situation over there in Seattle?
I'd actually still take Baldwin for both. My biggest problem is not the fact that I don't like Tyler Lockett. It's the fact that I don't like the Seahawks offense for what Tyler Lockett does. And it's not the fact that just him or his talent, is the way that they just mix everybody up. Just because he's the number 2 doesn't mean he's on the field as the number 2. Sometimes in 2 wides, you'll see Jermaine Kearse out there, who everybody seems to just forget about. Had some good games himself last year. He's just dismissing him as he has no factor involved in this offense. So you're going to see times where it's Baldwin and Kearse or Baldwin and Lockett. You're going to see times where it's Lockett and Kearse. That's just what they do. That's just how the Seahawks run their game. And I'm also looking at that backfield, assuming Pro Size is fine after a week. I think you have a real nice pass-catching option at the backfield. If Rawls is ready for the season, you should run a little bit more. So I don't know that we can say that Wilson's going to take another step forward. I think last year was a terrific season. I'm not discounting him or saying he's going to take a step back. I just think he might be what he was last year, and if that is, it's just the consistency of Lockett. Maybe I'll like him in a year or two now. Maybe if they get rid of Curse or Baldwin falls off, but I kind of see him as a Deshaun Jackson, where you're going to have 4 or 5 really nice weeks and just be frustrated all the rest of the time.
Completely agree. Like I think that Lockett just has the opportunity to disappear for a huge chunk of the season. Like he could completely be nowhere to be found for 2 or 3 weeks, and then explode on your bench, and then you have to try to play catch up and get him in your lineup the following week.
And then he goes for an offer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, so that ties us up 1-1. Eric, you named Doug Baldwin. Jake, you named Allen Robinson. Jake, it's back over to you. Who's your next guess?
I'm going with the old guy that everybody left for dead last year, Larry Fitzgerald.
Yes, Larry Fitzgerald. And Larry Fitzgerald finished as the number 7 receiver. And a lot of people might be shocked by this, but just as,
round 7?
Yes, well, just barely. Round 7. Actually, I have him here at 7.12, so just barely round 7.
Oh,
but,
wow.
yeah, and, Jamie was earlier talking about how he was surprised by that, but if you remember coming in, he was coming off of a couple down years and really exploded back onto the scene last year, finishing as the number 7 wide receiver. All right, Jake, that gives you another correct answer. Let's kick it back over to you, Eric. Who's your next guess?
Let's try another old guy, and we'll take an old guy in New York, and we'll try Brandon Marshall.
Yes, absolutely. Brandon Marshall, a little bit older there. And Brandon Marshall, despite finishing as the number 3 wide receiver in PPR last year, was going in the 5th round at 503 as the 24th wide receiver off the board heading into last year. All right, so that ties us up at 2. Now, Eric, you do have 1 strike, so we'll keep tabs on that, but that kicks us over to Jake. Jake, can you get your 3rd correct answer?
I think so, because Eric just gave me an idea.
Don't do it.
His
Don't
teammate, Eric Decker.
Yes. As has been the case in previous episodes, Decker and Marshall are showing up as correct answers on the strength of that strong first year under Chan Gailey over there in New York. But Eric Decker finished as the number 14 wide receiver. He was going off the board last year on average at 909, or the 43rd receiver off the board. So actually the second lowest receiver we have to make this list. Jake, another correct answer for you. That gives you 3. Jamie, can you go ahead and read off the names that have already been identified?
Okay. Doug Baldwin has been identified. Eric Decker, Larry Fitzgerald, Brandon Marshall, Allen Robinson, and then, of course, Alan Hearns was incorrectly announced.
That leaves just 2 correct answers, guys. Let's see if you guys can complete this list.
I don't know if he got into the top 15, and I'm probably gonna be my second damn strike, but I'm gonna try Sammy Watkins, because I know people were really down on him going into last year.
No, unfortunately, Sammy Watkins did not make the top 15 despite his very, very strong finish. He finished as wide receiver number 20. Now, he did only play 13 games, so on a point per game basis, he probably was in the top 15. And I see him here. He would have qualified in that he was going in the 6th round at 602. So yeah, you shifted gears correctly on the ADP piece, but you didn't get a top 15 receiver, Eric. Sorry, that's going to give you your 2nd strike and open up the door for Jake Seeley. So that does open the door a little bit for you, Jake. You can build I believe, a 3-point or a 4-point lead here if you can complete this list.
I feel like you enunciated PPR a little bit there, so I'm going to go with Jarvis Landry.
No, don't put that on. I did not enunciate that.
No, Jamie did. Jamie was like, and PPR scoring.
Jamie, you know that he's the all-in kid and he has poker tells, right, Jamie? You got to watch it.
No, I didn't know that. I was just trying to remind Eric
The good news is I have no idea.
Yeah, so Jarvis Landry is definitely a correct answer. Jarvis Landry finished number 11 in PPR formats. He was going off the board at 401. So, Jake, you barely made the ADP cutoff. He was going at 401, as the 17th receiver now. At that time, I believe Mike Wallace had departed and Devontae Parker was coming in as a rookie. They'd brought in Stills and I think Matthews was also an addition. So he did project to be the number one target out there, which probably speaks to why he was going almost into the third round at 401. So, all right, Jake, that gives you another point and leaves just one more correct guess. Can you close out this list?
The next one I was thinking of, I don't know if he's high enough, but because everybody doesn't realize that he was better in PPR, Michael Crabtree?
Yeah, very, very good guess. Michael Crabtree finished at number 16.
Oh.
Yes, he just barely missed this list, so you get a half point. But no, Michael Crabtree's going to give you your first strike, Jake, and it still leaves the lone receiver left on this list out there.
Jordan Matthews?
Well, so yeah, you're right. He wasn't he was actually going at 212. Now that I look at it, but
wow,
yeah,
I think that's just my own personal hate for Jordan Matthews.
You know what's amazing there? You missed with the number 16 and the number 17.
Well, at least Jordan Matthews didn't make the 401 cutoff either, so that makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah. And by the way, Alan Hearns was number 18, so you guys nailed 16, 17, and 18 on this list.
Yeah.
And wasn't Watkins 20, you said?
Yes. Oh, yeah, Watkins was 20, so the one guy that you didn't get was Emmanuel Sanders sandwiched in between those guys. But, yeah, sorry, Jake. That gives you your second strike, and that's going to close up this round. There was one remaining wide receiver on this list that you guys missed, and it was Jeremy Maclin. Jeremy Maclin came in at number 15. He was going off the board at 403, so barely missing the third round cutoff. And that's going to bring us to the end of the round school break. And I'm going to look back at one of our previous questions where we did the similar exercise around the running backs. And when we looked at the running backs, there were 8 running backs in the top 15 that went outside of the top 3 rounds. So when you're thinking about 6 and 8, there's a little more symmetry than we might be led to believe, in the sense that we always talk about running backs being more volatile at the top of drafts and wide receivers being more safe, but they look to be pretty close as far as whether you're hitting on them early and whether you can find them late. Do you have a strategy going in as far as what you're targeting in those first 2 rounds? Big phrases we're hearing about are late round quarterback, 0 running back, but I'm going to kick it over to you, Eric, and can you just talk in general about whether or not you stick to one of these strategies?
Well, especially in dynasty leagues, you can't come in with a set in stone draft strategy. You have to be pretty fluid in how the draft's playing out in front of you. So if you come in with a in ink strategy, more than likely you're going to be pretty ticked off at the end of your draft. So if I have a pick in the top 5, I'm pretty much locked into a wide receiver. I want to get one of the elite guys, knowing that when my second round pick comes back through, I'm probably still going to have my shot at a running back that I'm pretty comfortable with. There's a pretty good shot that there's going to be one of the young wide receivers that are still there because the position's so deep. In the top half of the first round, through those first 3 picks, I usually have my hands on 2 wide receivers I'm really excited about and a younger running back that I can build around. And then if I'm in the back end, I want to make sure that I have 2 elite pass catchers, and then at that point, I'm pretty much reserved to rolling with some of the older running backs later, some guys that most dynasty owners will pass on. And then in redraft, it's just wherever I pick out of the 12, I'll say I pick 5th, I'll just write down the top 17 players however I would want them, and then knowing I'm going to get 2 of those, I just take the 2 best players I can. And if I pick second, then obviously then the top 23 players. But I just try to don't stick to one strategy before the draft without knowing how it's playing out in front of you while it's going on.
Yep, got it there. So, and Jake, I know that last time you talked about zero running back, so this is somewhat of a staged question, but I'd love for you to articulate on kind of what your strategy is going into the first, or going into your drafts.
Yeah, I completely agree with Eric for the one fact of I get that question on Twitter so much is like, should I go wide receiver? Should I go wide receiver, running back, wide receiver? Like I always tell the same answer is don't go in with a set plan because you miss values. That being said, to say what your zero RB is, I hated zero RB last year. I hate it again this year. And I've been trying to tell everybody I want bell cow running back. And Chris Vaccaro plays a lot of high stake leagues. He's the one that actually hashtag bell cow RB is basically coming out of the first 2 rounds with a bell cow fantasy running back. That doesn't necessarily mean bell cow in the typical sense of he needs 20 carries per game. He's just somebody that that consistently every single week in fantasy is probably going to give you double-digit points because his touches are probably going to be in the 20s, whether it's passing or in the passing game and the rushing game. So that's what I'm looking for is, you don't have to take a wide receiver in the first round, but I'd like to get out of the first 2 rounds with a running back. If you go running back, wide receiver, running back, even running back, if the value is there, I just did a recent draft where I was in the middle of the round and I took David Johnson at number 6. I came back around, Le'Veon Bell was still there. And I wasn't going to pass on Le'Veon Bell in the middle of the second round, and I took my wide receiver in the third. So there's twofold. Is you get your bell cow running back, but you also do exactly what Eric said, and you adhere yourself to the best values on the board. That being said, in Dynasty, I do much prefer wide receivers just because they have the longer shelf lives for their career. They are more reliable for that fact. You don't have to worry about hitting the age 30. So I will lean towards wide receiver a lot more in Dynasty. But at the same time, again, I'm not going to ignore Ezekiel Elliott at the end of first round for something like that just because I want a wide receiver.
But that does it for round 1. Thank you, guys. And Jamie, what is the count after round 1?
After round 1, we have Jake 4, Eric 2.
Yeah, so 4-2, still anyone's ball game. We're going to go ahead and kick off round 2. And for round 2, we're going to start with you, Jake. This is going to be a team identification question.
Okay.
So the category here, and we're actually going to go highs and lows in this one, and it does deal with 2015. So this particular question deals with teams that scored touchdowns on over 25% of their possessions and teams that scored touchdowns on less than 15 of their possessions on the bottom. I'll go ahead and let you guys know that there's 6 teams that scored touchdowns on over 25% of their possessions, and there are 4 teams that scored touchdowns on less than 15% of their possessions.
So either or, we can get 10 possible teams.
That's right. There's 10 possible correct answers, and you're more than open to guess either a high or a low. Or if you're really blessed, you might guess a high and they may end up low.
I'm going to go with one of the low ones. I'm going to say the 49ers.
Yes, absolutely. And the 49ers came in last on this list. And they only had 177 possessions. They scored touchdowns on only 13% of those. The 49ers is a correct answer, and they were part of the lower bracket in this one. But that kicks it over to you, Eric. Who is your first guess?
Let's go with the Cowboys for the low side.
Yes. And that school bell means not only did you get a correct answer, but we're going to stop down and get your take on this. But yes, the Cowboys were under 15% at 14% of their drives, resulting in touchdowns. Staggering, just staggering how much the loss of Romo affected the Cowboys. Dez was a little banged up, but as we're looking at ADPs and where these players are going right now, Dez is still going in the first round. Ezekiel Elliott has climbed into the first round. Not sure that the Romo injury factor is in. I know that a lot of people bake in that injury factor when we're dealing with individual players, but in this case, I think there might be a case to be made to bake in Romo's injury factor. So let me just ask you guys both. Ezekiel Elliott and Dez Bryant, are they worth first-round picks? Let's start with you, Eric. You got this question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that Dez Bryant will be ready to rock, and with Romo coming back healthy, those two have a very legitimate connection, and I am in no way moving Dez down outside of the first round. And Zeke, man, I know the hype's getting pretty outrageous, but that Cowboys offensive line and that running game is just so legit. I mean, Darren McFadden was a 1,000-yard rusher last year. Zeke's ultra talented, assuming that there's, no more news that comes out of this domestic violence case. With the running back situation in the NFL like it is, there's just no reason to, be skeptical of Zeke outside of the first round. So, the upside, I think he has a high floor, and I think his ceiling is as high as anybody else's in the league.
All right, so Eric is not fading either of those players based on Romo's injury history. How about you, Jake? Are you factoring that in?
Not so much. We can go into every single year, and I know he has a history of it, and we often say that about a lot of players. Is once they start having a history, you start to factor that in. But at the same time, we're talking about elite talents here. I, for one, love Ezekiel Elliott. I think that everybody who's saying, "Oh, he's a rookie, he hasn't even stepped on the field," we can say that about rookies every single year. And I said, well, how did that work out for Odell Beckham 2 years ago? How did that work out for Todd Gurley last year? So I don't understand that argument. Never have. I actually have Ezekiel Elliott in the top 5. For standard leagues as a top 5 pick. He's one of the best pass blocking running backs we've seen in years, so he's going to be on the field all 3 downs. He's 20 touches a game. No question about it. Des Bryant, on the other hand, yes, in PPR, to play your little game, he just misses the cut in standard for me. Just barely. I mean, I think I have him at 14 overall in the standard, so he's right there. In PPR, I'm definitely still taking him in the first round. It's just the fact of in standard, I just talked about it a little while ago when we were talking about the bell cow running backs. There's a few running backs that jump ahead of him, like Mark Ingram, I'm trying to think of anybody. Eddie Lacy. I believe in the Slim Lacy. He's the real Slim Lacy, the real Slim Shady. I believe in him. So there's a few people that just nudges him out of the first round. But if you took him in the first round, I'm not going to say you're crazy at all.
All right, music to Cowboys fans' ears that Zeke and Dez are still going to be producing this year. So thank you for that, guys.
And Jason Witten. Everybody is writing off Jason Witten, and he was 10-12 in standard and PPR without Romo for 12 games. So there's another credit to your little Cowboys homerism there.
Yay.
And he's a clear-cut number 2 pass-catching option in that offense, man. They did nothing to address it. Terrence Williams is a turd. I mean, the opportunity's there, man. The volume.
All right, let's move on. We've got 2 of our bottom teams in the 49ers and Cowboys identified. That turns it back over to you, Jake. Who's your next guess?
I'm sticking with the crappy teams. I'm going with Cleveland.
Yes. Yeah, the Cleveland Browns came in as one of the lower teams. So another correct answer for you, Jake. Let's kick it back over to you, Eric. Can you keep pace?
Man, I have a feeling that 4th team under 15% is going to be a tricky one. So I'm going to jump ship and go to the other side of this, and I'm going to go with the Cardinals.
Yes, and the Cardinals come in at the top of this list, scoring a touchdown on a staggering 30% of their drives. Good answer there, Eric. Let's kick it back over to you, Jake. Who's your next guess?
I'm going to follow suit, and Eric can take the easy way out here. Patriots.
Yes, and that school bell means you got a correct answer, and we're going to break down for a school break. And the Patriots did show up on this list, and they scored on 28% of their they scored touchdowns on 28% of their drives. Now, we haven't talked much Patriots, but over there in Patriot land, it's been a busy offseason. They bring in Chris Hogan. Dion Lewis is coming back off of his injury. They bring in Martellus Bennett. And so, really, I'm going to leave it open to you guys. And those 3 players that I named, I just wanted you to give me kind of your take on them. We've got Chris Hogan, who's going at 12 in the 12th round. Dion Lewis is going in the 4th round. Martellus Bennett also in the 12th round. So we'll start with you, Jake. Chris Hogan, Dion Lewis, Martellus Bennett. What do you got for those guys?
If I'm going to take any of them, it's going to be Martellus Bennett. The Chris Hogan, I understand the appeal, but they also had, I think it was, if I'm correct, I'm sure somebody will go look it up and tell me on Twitter if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure after the draft they had 13 wide receivers on their roster. Obviously, they're not all going to make the team, but we're talking about, we got Nasty Nate out there now. They still have all the receivers from last year. Malcolm Mitchell, who they drafted, who I like as talent. And it's just like, for him to not only just make the team, which seems like he's going to for the fact that they signed him, but to be one of their top 3 options, let alone top 4 or 5 options, and then you have the fact that Martellus Bennett coming in there to be alongside Gronkowski and kind of recreate the Aaron Hernandez Gronkowski days. I don't want to count on any receiver. I'm basically not drafting Patriots wide receivers in redraft this league, even Edelman, given his injury history. We talked about injury history before. So of anybody, I'll take Martellus Bennett, because if I'm waiting on tight ends and I'm going to pair a tight end with somebody else, I'll go for him for the upside, because as we've heard so far is Garoppolo's targeting him a ton, which will get you value in the first couple weeks, and even after that, Tom Brady loves throwing the tight ends. Deion Lewis as the last person, I hate that. I understand. I was one of the people who said you can finally trust the Patriots running back last year, but at the same time, I don't understand how we're throwing out years and years and years of being pissed off at Belichick for somebody who's coming off an injury and had fumbling issues, and that was the reason we trusted him, is because he didn't come out of the games even with the fumbling issues. But he's coming off an injury. They still have Blunt. They still have James White. They still have options back there, not to mention all those receivers. I just don't know. I don't know that I can trust the game-to-game flow of Deion Lewis definitely getting 10 touches per game, even in PPR.
All right, good stuff. How about you, Eric? How are you handling these 3 names?
I kind of agree with Jake. The risk-reward factor for Deion Lewis is tilted the wrong way. If you're having to invest a 4th-round pick in Deion Lewis, that's still in that ADP range where you're pretty much banking on sure things, or things that you're pretty confident in, and the Patriots backfield's just not something I'm ever confident in. There's always a guy off the street. There's always, some bench dweller that Belichick will want to lean on, and that sort of investment I'm not willing to make with Deion Lewis. I'll let somebody else take that risk. And with Martellus Bennett, kind of piggybacking off what Jake said, that's just, better value from the tight end position. If you're waiting on tight ends, or if you're just going to stream tight ends, that's solid value in the 12th round. You don't have a heavy investment. You'll get production. He pairs well with Garoppolo. Just like Jake said, he's going to be the beneficiary of all the attention that gets paid to Gronk in the middle. And, Bennett's a force in the red zone. So, that's a strong value. And then Hogan, the great white unknown, he just fits that Belichick mold, man. Like, Welker came from the Dolphins and, turned into a superstar. Edelman, was a quarterback in college and just kind of paid his dues, at the end of the bench until Welker left, and then, turned into Welker. And Hogan just kind of has that same pedigree where, he flashed in Buffalo. He has that quick twitch, quicker than fast type of game, to where, within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, he can do his damage, get the ball in his hand, and just kind of make those quick twitch moves for, first downs. So, in the 12th round, depending on how the beginning of my draft went, if I'm looking for a lottery ticket type of wide receiver that, I don't care if he busts, but has a higher upside, I'd be willing to roll the dice and pull the trigger in the 12th round.
Okay. Good stuff, guys. Thank you for that. Let's move on. Right now, we've got the 2 of our top teams identified in the Cardinals and Patriots. We've also got 3 of the bottom teams in the Cowboys, the Browns, and the 49ers identified. That leaves us with 5 correct answers, and that's going to bring us over to you, Eric.
Let's go with the Saints.
That is correct. And the Saints came in actually at the bottom of the list of teams that scored on over 25% of their drives, but they were at 28%, so there was a big drop-off after the Saints. The Saints is a correct answer, though, so that ties us up, and neither analyst has a strike. With 6 teams identified, that leaves us with 4. Jake, can you get one of them?
Yeah, I'm going to go on the good side again here. Good old Cam Newton and his Panthers.
That's correct. And they also finished at the top of this list alongside the Cardinals. And this one's pretty staggering to me because after the loss of Kelvin Benjamin, I definitely wasn't expecting this. But the Panthers scored touchdowns on 30% of their drives.
So even if you take out like Jonathan Stewart's touchdowns, they probably still qualify on Cam Newton alone.
Probably, yes, that's correct. So yeah, that gives you another correct answer. Kicks us back over to you, Eric. Who's your guess?
Just based on the 2 receivers and that ground game, Man, this might be a strike, but were the Jets one of them?
No.
That was a good guess.
Yeah, very good guess. The Jets barely missed this list at 23%. Now, as I'm looking over this sheet, I think one of the things that hurt them is, surprisingly, the Jets had over 193 drives, which is one of the tops on this list. But the Jets, percentage-wise, did not make this list, although they did score a lot of points. So Eric, that does give you your first strike. And that moves us back over to you, Jake. Can you capitalize?
Maybe. I thought this might be a strike for me too. Where I thought he was going with somewhere different. I thought he was going to go with. So I'm going to guess it. The Steelers. The way that he phrased it. Oh.
Yes. The Steelers too is an incorrect answer, and they were right below this at 23% as well. So they scored a touchdown on 23% of their drives.
That's where I thought you were going, Eric, when you were talking about the backfield and the two receivers.
Yeah, but man, that Michael Vick, there's a few weeks.
That's
trash, man, hot trash.
Yeah. I tried to block that out of my memory, so.
Yeah. So, that gives both of our analysts one strike. So we're still neck and neck in this round. Eric, can you avoid elimination here by identifying one of the three correct answers left?
We have the Cardinals, the Panthers, the Patriots, the Saints, the Browns, the Cowboys, and the 49ers were the teams below. And then the Steelers and Jets were the misses.
The Seahawks.
And when you think efficiency, you do think the Seahawks and Russell Wilson over there. So the Seahawks, although they were kind of lower on the number of drives here at 163, they did score on 28% of their drives. So the Seahawks. So that brings us back over to you, Jake. Who is your next guess?
I think only because even after his start in the second half, and he was the only offense they had, and he wasn't that great in the second half, Todd Gurley. So I'm going to think the Rams.
Yes, and
it's that quarterback situation. It had to be.
Yeah, the Rams. They were alongside the Browns and the Cowboys at 14% of their drives, resulting in touchdowns. So, Jake, you've successfully identified another bottom team, and that
3 out of the 4. I'm all about the negative things.
Yeah, he was able to identify 3 of the 4 low guys on this totem pole, and that only leaves us with one correct guess, and that. They are in the tops of this category. Eric, can you get it?
Trying to think who scored a bunch of touchdowns last year, and we haven't named him yet. We'll go with Blake Bortles and the Jaguars.
That was my guess.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my next guess.
Jake, once again, saved by someone else's guess. But I think the thing to note here with the Jaguars is that, we talk about them being very volume dependent and garbage time and so forth. And that's kind of where this really, manifests itself in the touchdown percentage. They did not barely miss, but they were respectable at 21% of their drives ending up in touchdowns. Now, they had a lot of drives at 190, but they did not make this list, and they did not score touchdowns on over 25% of their drives. So, Eric, I'm sorry, but that eliminates you from this round. That's the bad news. Good news is there's only one team left, and Jake has one strike, so he's either going to complete this list or he's going to strike out, and we'll move on to the speed round. What you got there, Jake?
I'm trying to run through the divisions in my head. Guess the Bengals.
Wow. There you go.
No way.
Jeremy Hill had 11, 12 touchdowns alone. And then AJ Green with, yes. I said you were probably not going to write about anybody I was talking about in my article. I'm talking about Jeremy Hill.
Of course you are. All right, yes, that is absolutely correct, and you successfully completed this list with the Bengals, who they scored a touchdown on 28% of their drives. And when you think back, it does make sense when you think about Jeremy Hill and the really good year that Tyler Eifert had, and then the steady AJ Green. So 28%.
Where was Green Bay?
Green Bay was close. They came in at 22%. Yes, Jake, you successfully identified the Bengals to complete this list, so congratulations, guys. And that's going to bring us to the end of the round school bell. All right, and for this end of round, we'll keep it simple here. Can you tell me about a name who's likely to join this top list, and then maybe one that is going to drop out of the Cardinals, Panthers, Patriots, Seahawks, and Bengals, and Saints? Jake, you completed this round, so can you tell me a team you think could jump into this class and one that might fall out?
I gotta say, even with missing the first 4 games, if Ben Roethlisberger plays 16, I'm not talking about Le'Veon Bell missing the first 4. I think that the Steelers, that's, like I said, that was one of my picks before, and I forgot about the Vic situation. So it's all about 16 games. I think that the Steelers could make the jump into there. If I guess, banking on health isn't really fair, but I think that's the way to go. And then out of the teams that were there, I'm going to stick with my last pick. I'm going to say the Bengals, just because they lost Marvin Jones, they lost Mohamed Sanu, they have Tyler Boyd and Brandon LaFell stepping in. LaFell was basically a one-year wonder from the Patriots. Just the only good year they got out of him. I like their backfield, although I like Giovanni Bernard better than I like Hill. That's actually why I'm writing about him. I just think that you have Tyler Eifert missing possibly the entire first month. There's a lot of questions on this team to say they're going to be right back as efficient, if not even scoring as many touchdowns.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you, Jake. And how about you, Eric? Anyone you think can jump into this list or drop out of it?
For similar reasons to the Steelers, I think that the Packers are a prime candidate to jump into this list for the many of the same reasons. If Fat Eddie can get his game together,
Slim Lacy,
Slim Lacy,
get his game together and become a force on the stripe, and then you get Jordy back and Randall Cobb, really, pays off in his 1B role. He was stretched a little thin in the 1A. So, they have Jared Cook, and maybe he can finally be something with a competent quarterback and a high-powered offense. So I think that that team, when Rodgers is clicking, they can put up a ton of points in a hurry. So they would be my guess. And Jake, everything you said about the Bengals is right. So, but to give you just a different answer, just a different opinion, I think that the Seahawks might actually fall out of this list just as they search for a new identity. I think there's going to be a little bit of growing pains as they try to, retool on the fly in that run game. I think that, and especially in fantasy, we're too quick to buy off on players that put together like a second half from the previous season, and people that go all in on Thomas Rawls. They added a lot of backs in the draft this year. I think it was like the first time a team had drafted 3 or more running backs in the same draft in a ton of years. I can't remember exactly what it was, so forgive me for the lazy stat there. But I think that team might struggle to form an identity until they figure out who the right pieces are. So pick one to come in and one to come out. I think it's the Packers taking the Seahawks spot.
Can you read my phone screen?
No, there's pretty good glare.
Oh, Jeremy Hill and Thomas Rawls are both in my article. This is how everybody's like, oh, these are the players that can win your draft. Those are both I'm saying are the players that can lose your draft for you. Mm-hmm. So I like that. Good one. There's another one that I was writing about. See, we always talk about people I'm writing about.
I guess it's because you're always writing about everyone there, Jake. But
that's a good call by Eric. I really like that too.
Yeah, great stuff. Thanks again, guys. That's going to do it for round 2. And at the close of round 2, Jamie, do you have a count for us?
We have Jake at 10 and Eric at 6.
Don't worry, Eric. Everybody makes up ground on me on the final round. Where it fall apart.
Jake, since you are ahead right now, I'm going to go ahead and ask you to drop, and then we're going to give you a call back in about 2 minutes, I'd say.
Okay.
All right, Eric. So all we need you to do is grab all 7 of these, okay?
Yeah, I'm on it.
And we did go a little obscure because this was the final, so this one may not be cut and dry, but your question for the speed round. All I want to know is I'm going to give you 7 running backs, and all you have to do is answer yes if that running back has ever finished as the running back 1 in fantasy, in PPR. And if they have never finished as a number 1 running back in fantasy, simply say no. Once
So
again,
as a number one or the number one?
the number one.
Okay,
Number one overall fantasy running back.
gotcha. Understood.
Cool. Jamie, do you have 30 seconds on the clock?
I have 30 seconds on the clock. Are you guys ready? Okay. 30 seconds. Go.
Adrian Peterson.
Yes.
LaShawn McCoy.
Yes.
Jamal Charles.
Yes.
Matt Forte.
No.
Arian Foster.
Yes.
Marshawn Lynch.
No.
Maurice Jones-Drew.
Yes.
Finished in plenty of time.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and run through it. Eric, you answered yes to Adrian Peterson, and the correct answer was yes, so you got a point there. LaShawn McCoy came very, very close, but he actually finished second in 2013, but he did not finish as the number one running back.
The season he had like the 22 touchdowns. Who?
He finished. It was 20. Art. He finished second in 2010 and second in 2011.
Wow. I wonder who finished above him that year. He had like the 22 touchdowns or whatever it was.
In 2010, Arian Foster I have as the number one.
Yeah, it was
20
Arian Foster.
In 2011, I've got Ray Rice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, so unfortunately, LaShawn McCoy was an incorrect answer there. Jamal Charles, you answered yes, and he did do it in 2013. Matt Forte, you correctly identified as a no. It looks like in 2013 he came close, finishing third.
And he also finished second in 2008.
Yeah, he just doesn't score enough touchdowns, so I knew he would fall short.
Yep. Arian Foster, you answered correctly with yes, and he did it in 2010. Marshawn Lynch, you were correct. He did not finish as the number one back. He finished third behind Bell and Murray in 2014. And then Maurice Jones-Drew, you said yes, but he did not finish. His big year came on the same year that CJ, 2K, and AP had big years in 2009, so he finished third. So, Jamie, how many correct answers does that give him, and what is our current score?
He got 4 of 7 right, so he has 10 points.
I got 10 out of 7, so
10 out of 7.
Yes, you must go perfect here, Jake. Well, in all actuality, Jake, you need one correct answer. Eric did very well. He named 4 of the 7 correctly. That ties us up at 10-10. So, Jake, the category here is around the number one fantasy running back. In PPR formats, I'm going to give you 7 running backs. All you have to do is say yes or no. Yes means that in their career, they finished as the RB number one overall.
Okay.
If they've never finished as an RB number one overall, I want you to say no. So if you understand the question, Jamie, can you give us 30 seconds? And I will kick it off when you say go.
I've got 30 seconds. Jake, are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, 30 seconds. Go.
Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
LaShawn McCoy.
No.
Jamal Charles.
Yes.
Matt Forte.
Yes.
Arian Foster.
Yes.
Marshawn Lynch.
No.
Maurice Jones-Drew.
Yes.
Yes, that's going to do it. Jake, you correctly wrapped up this game by answering Adrian Peterson, and yes. Now, the interesting thing here with Adrian Peterson is that he actually only did it once, and that was in 2012. I think Jamie and I were both surprised that he's never done it more than once. Obviously, he's been in the top 5 quite often. LaShawn McCoy, you said no, and you are correct with LaShawn McCoy. Jamie, what were the years with LaShawn McCoy?
In 2010 and in 2011, McCoy finished number 2.
Okay. And then Jamal Charles, you answered correctly with yes, and he did finish as the number one back in 2013. Once again, only one season as the number one running back. Matt Forte, I believe you said yes, but he did not do it. He came closest in 2013 where he finished third. That was the same year that Jamal Charles finished first. LaShawn McCoy finished second.
In 2008, Matt Forte finished second.
Yeah, so very, very close.
Was that
there.
the season that he had the 100 and some odd receptions that he finished behind Charles? That was the season I was.
2013, yeah. His first year with Mark Chesson.
That's the season I was thinking of.
Yeah. Arian Foster, you correctly identified as yes. He did it in 2010. Marshawn Lynch, you correctly identified as no. He was third behind Le'Veon Bell and DeMarco Murray in 2014. Maurice Jones-Drew, you also said yes.
Yeah.
But he did not ever do it. Now, in 2009, he had a great year. No, incorrectly. But, his one really good year came in that year where CJ2K and AP both blew up. So 2009, Maurice Jones-Drew did not finish as the number one back. The interesting thing here, guys, is like the last time a person showed up twice on those lists, you have to go back to 2002, 2003, where Priest Holmes repeated as the number one back. There were quite a few years back then where, LaDainian Tomlinson, Sean Alexander, Priest Holmes showed up on the list, but it's been over 13 years since a player has had two number one running back seasons.
Wow.
Yeah, so interesting stuff there. But Jamie, that wraps up the speed round. Can you give us a final count?
Final count, Jake 15, Eric 10.
That is going to give
Championship ring.
Yes, Jake Seeley as our first ever fantasy face-off champion. So congratulations to Jake. Yes, and before we go off, what a great battle and great insight you guys gave us. So thank you guys so much for joining and being a part of this. I'm going to kick it over to you, Eric, before we sign off. Eric, anything you wanted to tell the listeners?
Like I told you before, man, thanks for inviting me to partake in this, man. I had a lot of fun. I got to meet, three people that, I wasn't following before that I am now. I really appreciate everything. Jake, congratulations, man. Those weren't easy questions, man. They really brought the heat tonight. So if anybody's interested in reading my work or finding, where I hang out on the internets, that's Dynasty League Football, and on Twitter at OlingerIDP. Hit me up. We can talk football, Star Wars, Batman, meat, whatever. Just But thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Well, no, thank you, Eric, because you're a really great competitor, and we really appreciate you coming on. But let's kick it over to the newly crowned champ, Jake. Any parting words for the fans?
Well, first for Eric, I'm now following him too, and I didn't even need to meet him because all I had to do, I just wish I would have clicked on his profile a little bit earlier because he's got Justice League, and then he mentions Star Wars, so I just would have followed him anyway. For everybody listening, this is actually a lot of fun. I think it's a great concept. I said that again last week. It kind of gave me some ideas for our own show that I've been doing. Just to, not exact, definitely not ripping you guys off, but just own idea to bring some more interest to shows of doing things of looking at the past and learning from them. I just thought it was a really good concept. I hope you guys keep it going with another 8 different people going forward.
Yeah, we'll definitely keep it going, and not sure when we're going to kick off our next bracket, but I did want to remind the analysts and you, Jake and Eric, that if there's anyone out there that you want to challenge, we're going to kick off a challenge series where we're going to do one-off fantasy face-offs. Because we still think that it's going to be a fun way to bring information to the community. And what better than to pick your opponent that you can crush into the ground like Jake Seeley did here. So,
I want this guy, and look no further. I want my rematch with Jake.
So, all right, Eric's calling for a rematch.
Background, man. I'm coming for it, Jake.
But like I said, if you guys are able to find an opponent, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'll do the legwork. We'll coordinate schedules. We'll pull the questions together, and we'll have a lot of fun like we always do on this podcast. But that's going to do it. Another congratulations to Jake Seeley. Any parting words for the listeners from you, Jamie?
No, just again, thanks everyone who's listening to this, and for those who've been following us. It's been a blast. It was better than what we even thought. It was something we had thought of and put together. We thought it was going to be a lot of fun. We were glad to be able to get guys like Eric and Jake on here. We really do appreciate you guys joining us for this. It does seem to be catching on. I'm getting a lot of DMs on Twitter, people asking questions, especially about the spin-off, the one-off or whatever. So we'll see where that goes. But at the end of the day, just thanks everyone for listening, and thank you guys. We really do appreciate you spending the time with us to do this. It means a lot.
Yeah, huge thanks to all the competitors, and Jake, you'll always be the initial and inaugural Fantasy Face-Off champion, so we thank you for that.
You never forget your first.
Yeah, okay. All right. So that's going to bring this first Fantasy Face-Off bracket to a close. I want to thank all of the analysts and all the listeners for tuning in. Remember to check us out at www.fantasyipa.com. Follow at fantasy_IPA. Look out for future iterations of the Fantasy Face-Off, as well as those aforementioned one-off challenge series face-off episodes. Going to do it for this episode, and until next time, make sure you're getting you some IPA.
Adios.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy IPA podcast. Visit us at fantasyipa.com and follow us on Twitter at fantasy_IPA.
Hail to the king, baby.
To the house, baby.
Please subscribe and review at iTunes, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Call trust. That's called trust.
See you next time, and until then, make sure you get you some IPA.
Come get some.
Get some. Get some. Get some.
We just want to say thank you for all the love.
And we're out.